So everybody started class by staring at 9 blank rectangles. And when I gave you these 9 rectangles, people were thinking typical day. It's going to be some sort of graphic organizer, taking notes, maybe 9 different readings, 9 different pictures. I filled in, I'll fill out my worksheet, turn it in, live to fight another day. But I made your life a little more challenging. And I said this, I said, pretend I've never met you. Never met you, I don't know the first thing about you. I want you to tell me your life story in these 9 rectangles. But you can't use words. You have to use pictures. You know, I would personally struggle with this drill, and some people did. Eventually, a lot of people came around and said, okay, my life story. Okay, the beginning. How about birth? And I saw cute little, swaddled babies with pacifiers in hospitals, and there's a lot of consensus in what the first one should look like. The last one, the 9th one, most of the rectangles were showing things that are very present in your life right now. The challenge were these 7 rectangles, and it was a mixed bag. I saw happy things, hey, the first day I played my musical instrument, or the day I won the soccer trophy, or the day my baby brother was born. That was a great day, happy. Saw some unhappy things, a lot of divorce, death, people moving a lot. It was a challenge. I walked around the room backwards, forwards, and sideways. I think I looked at everybody's story. I learned so much about the people in my classes with 9 pictures on a sheet of paper. So here's the question. Why would I turn a history class into art class? Well, it has to do with this. Now, this is called the Bayeux Tapestry. And the Bayeux Tapestry, well, first of all, you have to know what a tapestry is. A tapestry is a piece of fabric that, it's either painted or sewed, and it's decorative. You hang it on the wall. And the Bayeux Tapestry is enormous. I'm going to show you a picture in a moment to show you the scale. And it's a story of the Norman Conquest. And it goes on. And I could keep doing this a long time. I'm not going to say keep going, keep going, keep going. This is the Energizer Bunny of tapestries. And it tells the story with mainly pictures. Few words, but mainly pictures to tell the story. So the Bayeux Tapestry was a form of history that relied on art and pictures and graphics to tell the story. And here's a question I want to ask you as I move on to the PowerPoint, the Bayeux Tapestry, which told the story of the Norman invasion. And here's my question to you. Is art and storytelling on par with writing? Now, this shows the Bayeux Tapestry in a lot more detail. It keeps going, it's going, multi-layered, wrapping around the room. Unfortunately, I've never laid my own eyes on it. My student teacher last year did, and he told me that you can't believe how big it is, that a picture doesn't do it justice. And I'm going to take you back to the beginning of the year. I gave you this in class. I tested you on this, the 7 criterion for civilization. Cities, formal government laws, the use of advanced tools, advanced religious structures, specialized jobs that result in different social classes, and writing. And I mentioned some people that lived and we weren't considering them civilized, oftentimes because of a lack of writing. But here's my question to you. A great story. Can you tell history with a great story? Can a piece of art tell story on par with writing? And this is a debate historians have. I remember teaching U.S. history. I'd show Dorothea Lange's Migrant Mother to teach about the Great Depression. And I could make an argument that photograph is as illustrative of the Great Depression as any reading I can do. So here's a question I want to ask you. Because the Bayeux Tapestry was primarily art and storytelling with minimal writing. So food for thought. Food for thought. I'm personally of the belief that you do need writing, but not everybody agrees with me. I'll let you figure that out yourself. Now, you saw it a moment ago. It just goes on and on and on along the wall. Here's an individual square to kind of give you a scale of the story. And here is the story. The story of William the Conqueror. William was the son of Robert I, Duke of Normandy, and his mistress Herleva. The Duke, who had no other sons, designated William his heir, or the person who inherits his stuff, and with his death in 1035, William became the Duke of Normandy. Now, William was of Viking origin. Though he spoke a dialect of French and grew up in Normandy, a fiefdom, and if you recall what a fiefdom is, it's a chunk of land given by the king to his nobles, a fiefdom loyal to the French kingdom. He and other Normans descended from Scandinavian invaders. One of William's relatives, Rollo, pillaged northern France with fellow Viking raiders in the late 9th and early 10th century, eventually accepting his own territory, Normandy, named for the Norsemen who controlled it in exchange for peace. Now, just over 2 weeks before the Battle of Hastings in October 1066, William had invaded England, claiming his right to the English throne. In 1051, William is believed to have visited England and met with his cousin Edward the Confessor, the childless English king. According to Norman historians, Edward promised to make William his heir. On his deathbed, however, Edward granted the kingdom to Harold Godwinson, head of the leading noble family in England. In January of 1066, King Edward died, and Harold Godwinson was proclaimed King Harold II. William says, no, that's not true. I dispute this. This is not happening. If you have two sides that can't agree, you can probably guess what's going to happen, which was the Battle of Hastings. In 1066, William landed in England with thousands of troops and cavalry. He then marched to Hastings, where he took a minute to get his forces ready. Harold arrived on October 13th with his army. The next day, it was all-out battle. William won, a decisive victory against Harold's men. Now, the legend has it that Harold was shot in the eye with an arrow, which is kind of cool, and his forces were destroyed. William has won the battle. Now, here's the question of this story. Why is this important? Why in modern America am I telling a story from England from, millennia ago, right? So why is this important? I want you to take a step back. And when Rome fell, we have the Byzantine Empire to the east, but to the west and in a lot of Europe, there were these barbarian groups that were throughout Europe. And two of those were the Angles and the Saxons. Now, the Angles and Saxons were a barbarian group that William was able to conquer. And what we saw happening was that these barbarian groups eventually take on larger national identities. Celts, Irish now, Picts, Scots, Jutes, Danes, Angles and Saxons, English, Franks, France, so on and so forth. So this is an example of this. This is a process where barbarian groups became larger national identities, which eventually became the notion of a modern country. And this is this first part, unification. The second reason it's important, the influence on the modern English language. How many French words do we use in our language? It's constructed the language. So if I were to say I live in a cul-de-sac, I'm going to DQ and getting a parfait. We use, French words just left and right. I'm not going to go through the list, but you can think of them. You're a canoeer. You take a portage. I mean, the words just keep coming. So we have this real French influence, but this French influence was the thing that started the wheels in motion to the modern English we have today. And it was the birth of a unified England. And bear in mind, England eventually grows to become an imperial nation. And when I mean an imperial nation, there was an expression, the sun never sets on the British Empire. That's literally true. That's how much they spread out. And I want you to remember, one of the English colonies was the 13 colonies in America. And this country grew out of English soil, and bear this in mind. So you can take this country's history, and if you go back far enough, you can trace it to this event. So let me repeat this. William the Conqueror was an example of barbarian groups eventually taking on larger national identities. It had a strong influence on our language, and it was the birth of a unified England. And I want to leave you with one last thought. In terms of telling somebody history, is writing any more valid than art or storytelling? And this is a tough question. In your own history, if you're going to tell me your own history, what's the easiest way to express to me? It's a good question. I don't necessarily have the answer, but I want you thinking about it. So thanks for watching.